A black mother rushes into the ER, clutching her unconscious son, but the white nurse hands the clipboard to a white woman behind her. "Ma'am, she was here first," the nurse says, not realizing the other woman is just holding a purse. As her son seizes on the floor, no one moves. Then the mother screams something that makes the entire room freeze. But by the time they look down, it's already too late. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. In a building filled with billion-dollar ideas, no one knew the quiet janitor sweeping floors could speak 9 languages, because no one ever asked. In the 30-story glass tower of Alton Technologies, the air was always crisp with ambition, filtered by billion-dollar HVAC systems and perfumed with espresso from private baristas. Ideas floated like ghosts between floors, whispered in boardrooms and spat out in Slack channels, coded into apps meant to change the world. But in the basement, past the freight elevators and the loading dock, Darius Cole moved like a shadow with a mop. He'd been on the graveyard shift for nearly 4 years. No one ever asked why a man with such perfect posture and weathered books tucked into his utility cart worked nights, cleaning office floors. They assumed, maybe an ex-con, GED at best, possibly didn't speak English too well. No one noticed that he read 4 different news sites, each in a different language, on his cracked Android. No one paid attention when he stopped at a hallway painting and softly muttered its original German title under his breath. Darius had learned the rules of corporate invisibility. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't linger in front of glass walls. Never offer opinions. Smile just enough to seem grateful, not so much that it looks smug. He stayed quiet, watched, listened. Floors changed, policies changed, interns came and went, but he remained a constant in the background, the man with the mop who never seemed to miss a day. And then came Tuesday night. It was late. The executive floor was empty. The automatic lights dimmed low in power-saving mode. Darius was polishing the conference table in Orion Suite 29C, where the company's board had met earlier. He leaned under a leather chair to pick up a dropped pen when he heard voices in the hallway. "I swear to God, Claude, if you butcher another pitch in French like that, I'll call your mother myself." It was Maxwell Crane, CEO of Alton Technologies. Mid-40s, steely-eyed, sharp-jawed, known for founding the company in his dorm and firing his co-founder on a Zoom call during the pandemic. His words cut clean, half laugh, half warning. He was flanked by Claude Reinhardt, a former diplomat turned diversity consultant, who seemed visibly flustered. "Je parle correctement, n'est-ce pas?" Claude offered weakly. Darius froze. He hadn't meant to say it out loud, but his lips moved before he could stop them. "Pas du tout. Vous avez confondu le subjonctif avec le conditionnel." "Not even close. You confused the subjunctive with the conditional." Silence followed. Darius stood up slowly, instinct already screaming that he had crossed an invisible line, the kind you never cross in places like this. But when he turned, Maxwell Crane wasn't angry. He looked intrigued. "What was that?" Maxwell asked, stepping into the room. "Just cleaning up, sir," Darius said quietly. "No, before that," Maxwell pressed. Darius hesitated. "You confused the subjunctive with the conditional tense." Claude blinked, reddening. "Excuse me." Maxwell stepped closer, eyes narrowed. "You speak French?" Darius nodded. "Among others." "Which others?" He swallowed. "Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, German, Italian, Russian, Swahili, Japanese." Claude let out a sharp laugh. "What is this? Some kind of party trick?" Darius said nothing. Maxwell glanced at Claude. "Say something. Anything." Claude launched into a rushed sentence in German. Something about cultural synergy. Darius repeated it verbatim, then calmly corrected his noun usage. Maxwell took a step back, visibly stunned. "Where did you learn that?" "Library." "Which school?" "No school. Just listening, reading." Silence stretched for several long seconds. Then something unthinkable happened. Maxwell extended his hand. "Maxwell Crane, you got a minute tomorrow morning?" Darius looked down at his mop, his shoes, his stained badge. Was this a trap? "Yes, sir," he said, voice low. "Good. I want to show you something." Maxwell turned and left, muttering to himself as the doors slid shut. 9 languages. Jesus Christ. Darius stood in the room alone, heartbeat thudding so loud it felt like part of the building's hum. On the table sat a half-empty glass of mineral water. His warped reflection shimmered in it. What had just happened? He finished his shift like nothing had changed. But everything had. The next morning came too fast. Darius showed up in his cleanest uniform, starched and pressed. He entered through the same employee entrance he used every day, but this time, the receptionist looked up when he passed. No smile, just awareness. That alone was new. He was told to wait on the twin. It was the first time in 4 years he had ever ridden the elevator alone. No supplies, no trash bags, just him. His breath shallow, stomach tight. Maxwell Crane's office was a minimalist expanse of walnut and steel. He motioned Darius in, without looking up from his screen. I read your file, he said flatly. Parents from Eritrea, no formal education beyond high school, nothing on LinkedIn. I've applied to other positions, Darius said. No recommendations. No college. No responses. Maxwell looked up. Why? Darius didn't answer. He didn't need to. Maxwell tapped his screen. I'm flying to Brussels next week. There's a meeting with 3 firms. 2 French, 1 Belgian. None use English in their materials. I need someone who can translate nuance. Not Google Translate. Garbage. I'm not certified, Darius said. I'm not asking if you are, Maxwell replied. I'm asking if you're better than a consultant charging me $8,000 a day. Silent. Then Darius said, yes. Maxwell stood. I'll see you at 9 a.m. in conference room 3B tomorrow. Wear a blazer. Not that. He motioned toward Darius's janitor uniform. And just like that, Darius was dismissed. He walked out of that office feeling lighter, but also afraid. This was not a promotion. There was no job title, no paperwork, no clarity. He was being tested. Worse, he was being watched. He almost didn't notice Connor Wexley, the Harvard intern, watching from a desk in the corner. As he left the office, Connor smiled, but the kind of smile Darius had learned to interpret early in life. It wasn't welcoming. It was calculating. Darius returned to his janitor closet and sat in silence. For the first time in years, someone had seen him. But what had they really seen? And what would they do with it? But that night, as Darius lay in bed replaying every word from the CEO, he didn't know that Connor had already copied his notes and pitched them as his own. Born to immigrants and dismissed since grade school, Darius Cole grew up learning to disappear before they could misjudge him. Darius Cole didn't always know how to disappear. That was something life taught him. Before he was a janitor, before the boardrooms and the slipstream of corporate silence, he was just a boy, the black boy who sat too still in classrooms where teachers forgot to learn his name, where substitute roll calls stumbled, paused, skipped, where eyes rolled when he raised his hand, where gifted was a label, given only to the loud always white, and his silence was mistaken for dullness instead of restraint. He was 8 the first time he realized he'd have to be twice as quiet just to be half as threatening. His father, Samuel Tesfaye Cole, once a university lecturer in Eritrea, now stocked freezers at a 24-hour grocery store. His mother, Lena, cleaned apartments in high-rises she could never afford to live in. They were soft-spoken, religious and hopeful in that worn-down way immigrant families tend to be, hopes stretched thin across rent, hospital bills, and half a dozen job applications that never got callbacks. They told Darius to work hard and stay humble. So he did. He studied between cleaning shifts, carried novels in his hoodie, practiced Mandarin from bootleg cassette tapes, borrowed from the church library. When bullies asked him why he sounded too proper, he didn't answer. When teachers pulled him aside to say, "You're smart for your background," he swallowed the acid in his throat and nodded. He didn't just learn languages. He learned silence. He learned to code switch before he even knew the term. English at school, Tigrinya at home, Spanish with the laundromat lady, French from the Senegalese family, 2 floors up. He collected voices, watched the way white professionals smiled too wide at him, as if approval could be bartered with pity. Even as a boy, he knew which version of himself to bring to which room. By the time he turned 18, he had memorized how to fold himself so small he could pass through a system built to overlook him. At Alton Technologies, that skill kept him alive. The executive team didn't know about his past. Not that they cared. They called him Buddy when they wanted something, or Chief when they tossed keys his way. Sometimes the kid, even though he was pushing 30, Darius had stopped correcting people long ago. He figured names were for the visible. But something had shifted since the night Maxwell Crane heard him speak. It wasn't just that he was invited to a meeting. Something unspoken had cracked. Like the rules had bent, ever so slightly. He walked through the building differently now. Even if his badge still said maintenance support. People made eye contact. Doors opened before he reached them. But with visibility came risk. He spent the night awake, turning the CEO's words over in his head. I want to show you something. What did that mean? Was it a job offer? A trap? A test? Was he being set up to fail? Used as a corporate mascot for diversity? Or worse, being paraded around to justify policies that would hurt workers like his own mother? He knew what happened to black men who got too close to power without armor. The fall was always fast, and no one looked back. At dawn, he stood in the bathroom, palms pressed to the mirror, staring at himself. Not the uniform, not the mop. Him. The boy who'd once wanted to be a linguist, then a teacher, then nothing. Because at some point, the world tells you to pick a box. And when the box doesn't fit, you learn to carry it anyway. He arrived at the office early. Maxwell Crane was already there, pacing in front of a smartboard filled with product mock-ups and analytics charts. When he saw Darius, he motioned him in without small talk. Sit. Darius obeyed, stiffly. Crane clicked his remote. A slide came up. Global markets, Q4 projections. We're launching an AI platform in 4 markets. We've hired language firms to localize our pitch decks, costing us $160,000. I want you to review them. Darius blinked. Me? You said you speak 9 languages. Let's find out. Crane handed him a packet. 20 pages. French, Mandarin, Arabic, and Spanish variations. For 30 minutes, Darius read silently, flipping pages, scribbling margin notes, circling mistranslations, replacing clunky expressions with culturally appropriate phrasing. Maxwell leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching. Not interrupting, just watching. When Darius finished, he handed it back. There's some awkward phrasing. The Mandarin version uses a mainland idiom, but the target region is Taiwan, and the Arabic leans Egyptian, not Gulf Standard. Crane flipped through the notes. Jesus. Silence stretched. Then he looked up. What would you need to do this full time? Darius hesitated. A laptop. A desk. A title. Crane smiled faintly. You're not asking for much. I'm not expecting much. Another silence. Crane tapped the table. Come back tomorrow. We'll set you up. Darius nodded, still unsure if this was real. Then Crane added, casually, oh, and wear something better. I want you in the strategy meeting next week. That night, Darius didn't go home. He walked the city blocks until his feet ached. He passed luxury condos where he used to clean windows, tech cafes where baristas used to ignore him, recruiters who had ghosted his resume 3 years ago. He thought about telling his mother but stopped. The last time he'd shared good news, the layoffs came 3 days later. Instead, he stopped at a second-hand shop and bought a blazer. $14. Slight rip in the lining. He tried it on in the mirror. It didn't fit right. He didn't fit right. The next morning, he entered through the front. The receptionist looked up, blinked, then nodded slowly. A security guard asked for ID. He flashed his badge. The guard paused, then handed him a new one. Darius Cole, Global Strategy. His throat tightened. He rode the elevator to the 20th. Connor Wexley, the Harvard intern, was already there typing furiously on a MacBook. He glanced at Darius, smiled. Didn't expect to see you again so soon, Connor said smoothly. Darius gave a polite nod. Connor leaned in. I saw your notes on the Arabic deck. Smart call. I used the Gulf dialect fix in my rewrite. Darius blinked. His notes? His rewrite? Connor smiled wider. Hope you don't mind. Maxwell wanted it fast. I figured we're all on the same team now. Darius nodded again, but inside his heart was cracking in slow motion. Connor had taken credit. Fast. Publicly. In Maxwell, he'd said nothing. That night, an email pinged on Darius's phone. Subject: private meeting, 9, from Maxwell Crane. Just one line inside. Bring everything you haven't said out loud yet. So when Maxwell invites him to a private meeting the next morning, Darius is torn between fear and something far more dangerous. Hope. Racism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it offers you a seat at the table, then pulls the chair mid-fall. When Darius Cole stepped into the private meeting room that morning, he noticed 3 things at once. The temperature was colder than usual, the blinds were drawn, and Maxwell Crane had already poured him a coffee. It wasn't a gesture of kindness. It was a signal. The kind that says, "You're being watched now. Play it right." Darius sat down carefully. A thick folder rested in front of him, sealed. A single page sat on top, typed in pristine legal formatting. Non-disclosure agreement. Sign before proceeding. Maxwell didn't look up from his phone. "Take your time." Darius scanned the page. Standard legalese, except the term perpetual confidentiality, was bolded and underlined. He noticed the words "compensation to be determined" repeated twice. His throat tightened. What exactly am I signing for? Maxwell finally looked at him. Opportunity. Darius raised an eyebrow. That's vague. Good, Maxwell said. Because it has to be. There was a silence. Not tension. Exactly. More like a shared awareness of an invisible contract already in motion. You've impressed people, Darius, Maxwell continued, lacing his fingers together. Even Connor. He says you have a natural instinct for localization strategy. Darius almost flinched. His notes. Connor had used his edits. The credit had quietly been reassigned. Maxwell's tone was even, maybe too even. We're opening a new vertical. A side unit. Quietly. Before it goes public. We want you in it. And the NDA? We want people who can be trusted. This isn't janitorial anymore. This is executive adjacent. You'd be ghosting strategy work. No public title, no LinkedIn clout, but real input. Darius glanced again at the untouched coffee mug. His own name was printed on it. Black Sharpie. Sloppy handwriting. New. Bought just for this meeting. He said nothing. I'm giving you a seat at the table, Darius, Maxwell added. You've earned that. But Darius had heard that tone before. He'd seen it on guidance counselors who offered him alternate pathways in school. On landlords who said the apartment had just been rented as soon as he showed up. On HR managers who didn't think he'd be a culture fit after glowing phone interviews. It was the voice of institutional politeness wrapped around a cage. Still, he picked up the pen. Sign it, Maxwell said, and I'll make sure you're seen. Darius paused. He'd waited his whole life to be seen. But something inside him twisted. He signed. The folder opened like a door to a maze. Inside were presentation decks. 4 of them, each with brand new copy written in different languages. Each one had Darius's voice in it. His phrasings, his corrections. But none bore his name. There were emails too. Email chains with subject lines like Connor's French revamp and Wexley's language optimizations. He flipped another page, a memo from Connor to the strategy team, summarizing Darius's analysis from the prior day word for word. Maxwell tapped the table. Smart kid, that Wexley, thinks fast. Works clean. Darius didn't speak. Connor sees the value in collaboration, Maxwell added, smiling faintly. He wants you on his internal team. You two would work well together. Another signal. Not a promotion. Not a credit. A shadow. Darius leaned back. So I stay invisible, he said. You stay essential, Maxwell corrected. Later, back at the janitor's closet, still technically his assigned office, Darius stared at the polished mug. His name stared back. A coffee mug wasn't a desk. It wasn't a title. It was a pacifier. A token. Something to make a ghost feel tangible. And he was being asked to smile through it. He knew what was happening. The reshuffling. The repackaging of black brilliance beneath white branding. The game where black talent got filtered through white voices so it could be made palatable to investors. It was happening again. But this time he was inside the room, and that made it worse. That evening, he took a long walk through South Elmont, past the old corner where his father used to sell incense sticks on weekends. He thought about the phone call he'd once overheard when his father was begging for a warehouse job. How the manager had asked, "Can your dad understand basic safety English?" And how Darius, 12 years old and fluent in 2 languages already, had screamed, "He speaks 4" into the receiver before his father hung up in shame. He thought about how his mother had cleaned luxury penthouses for women who said things like, "You people work so hard," and tipped her with Christian pamphlets instead of cash. And now here he was, ghostwriting strategy decks, while Connor Wexley climbed the ladder with his words. He arrived home that night and stared at the NDA again. The line kept ringing in his head. Perpetual confidentiality. He pulled out his laptop. Started Googling case law. Similar contracts. Precedent. Settlement. What he found chilled him. The NDA had been written to lock him into silence. Not just about this project, But anything he discovered while under this internal team umbrella, that included unethical practices, racism, fraud, and discrepancies in authorship. Discrepancies in authorship. That's what they were calling intellectual theft now. And worse, it included a non-compete clause so vague it could bar him from working in tech strategy for 2 years after leaving the role. He'd been set up. He wasn't being lifted. He was being contained. Brilliance without control. Input without authorship. Labor without legacy. The next morning, he entered the office early. Blazer pressed, eyes focused. Connor was already there. Smiling. "You ready for the deck review with Maxwell?" he asked. Darius nodded. "Sure. You know," Connor said, lowering his voice. "This is big. Most interns never get this close to product rollouts. But you and me." "I'm not an intern," Darius interrupted. Connor blinked, then grinned. "Right. Strategy support. My bad." Darius said nothing. They entered the conference room. Maxwell was waiting, nodding to the deck already cued on the screen. Darius sat down, looked at the title slide. Wexley International Deck Q4 Localization Vision. And underneath, Lead. Connor Wexley. Support TB. He didn't blink. Maxwell began to speak. "Let's walk through the vision." But Darius wasn't listening. He was staring at the bottom of the screen. The watermark. Barely visible. Embedded in the slide background. Drafted by D. His version. His draft. Left in by mistake. A ghost trace. Connor hadn't noticed it. Maxwell hadn't either. But it was there, and it meant someone could still know the truth, if they looked close enough. After the meeting, Maxwell pulled Darius aside. "You did good," he said. Darius stared. "Don't look so grim," Maxwell continued. "You're part of something now. You've been handed a golden ticket." "I didn't ask for a ticket," Darius said. Maxwell smiled again, too wide. "That's the thing about systems, Darius. You don't ask. You earn the right to be allowed." Then he leaned in. "Quiet. Keep your head down. Play this right. In 5 years, you'll have everything you ever wanted." Darius nodded. But inside he knew something Maxwell didn't. He had never wanted everything. He just wanted his name. That night, he returned to his apartment. He opened the folder again. He reread the NDA. And his eyes stopped on a section he hadn't noticed before. Clause 17. Public disclosure exceptions. Employee may disclose protected information only when such disclosure is required by applicable law or when acting as a whistleblower, in response to regulatory investigation or protected reporting channels. His pulse jumped. A door. Small. Legal. But open. Not everything was locked. Not yet. Darius opens the NDA, only to realize what he's being offered might erase his past. Or exploit it. The glass in conference room Delta 19 vibrated with tension. There were 20 executives seated, some in stiff suits, others in startup hoodies designed to look casual but cost more than Darius's entire week of wages. In front of them, a screen flicked through a multilingual slide deck charts, predictions, slogans, all crafted to seduce 4 global markets. On paper, it was flawless, but the voice delivering it was cracking under pressure. Connor Wexley was sweating through his dress shirt. He stood at the head of the room, flipping through slides with forced confidence, botching key phrases in French and mispronouncing brand terms in Mandarin. It was all moving too fast, and no one had the courage or perhaps the permission to stop him. Maxwell Crane sat near the center of the table, arms crossed, face unreadable. Darius stood against the back wall, silently watching. He wasn't invited to speak. He had been told he was there to observe. Nothing more. His blazer was borrowed, 2 sizes too small in the shoulders. His name wasn't printed on the agenda. Connor had led the deck revision, and no one in the room knew that every sentence on the screen had been rewritten by the man standing in the shadows. Connor stumbled again. In French he read, "Our slogan becomes Le pouvoir est dans vos dents," which literally means, the power is in your teeth, but that's close enough, right? A few chuckles around the table. One executive leaned sideways and whispered something into a colleague's ear. Maxwell didn't laugh. Then, without turning his head, he said the words that would change the room. "Darius, come up here." There was a sharp pause. Connor's hand froze over the trackpad. Darius didn't move. "I said," Maxwell repeated, louder. "Darius, come show us what you see." The room shifted. Executives glanced around. Some frowned. Some whispered. Darius walked forward, calm but alert, and took Connor's place. Connor backed off reluctantly, his face stiff with embarrassment. Darius looked at the first slide. Then slowly, fluently, he translated it. First in proper French, flawless, natural, regional. Then into Mandarin, not just with accurate terms, but with tonal nuance and cultural metaphor. Then into Arabic, shifting right to left, adapting idioms to match the socio-political context of the Gulf audience. 3 languages. 1 slide, less than 90 seconds. Silence. Then the second slide. He did the same. Then the third. And the fourth. He didn't just speak the languages. He lived them. He knew what to remove, what to emphasize, and what sounded good on paper but terrible in a boardroom in Dubai or a cafe in Brussels. By the 6th slide, jaws were dropping. One woman from the London office looked at her notepad, then at Maxwell. "Where did you find him?" she mouthed. Maxwell didn't answer. He didn't need to. Connor, still standing to the side, looked like he'd been slapped in front of his mentors. And in a way he had, because for the first time in the company's history, someone had walked into the room who not only understood the languages, but also knew how to decode the cultures behind them. When Darius finished, he stood back, hands clasped. No one clapped at first, but the silence was heavy, full of awe. Then, one person, an executive from the Tokyo branch, offered a slow, deliberate nod. The woman from London followed with a short clap. Then others joined. The applause grew, not explosive, but deeply respectful. Darius didn't smile. He just stepped back and returned to his place against the wall. Maxwell stood. "Well," he said, "that's what I call strategy." The meeting ended minutes later. Connor exited without speaking. Darius lingered behind, slowly packing up cables and handouts, performing a task he hadn't been assigned, but was expected to do anyway. One executive passed by and patted his shoulder. "That was impressive," he said. "You do consulting work?" Darius shook his head. "Just maintenance." The executive blinked, half chuckling like it had to be a joke. Maxwell was still in the room, talking with his assistant when the London director leaned over to him. "Maxwell, you've got to put him on the stage at the summit." "Stage?" Maxwell asked, raising an eyebrow. "The Global Tech Summit," she clarified. "He presents that pitch in Paris next month. We closed the funding round. Period. No one else can land it like that. You saw the reaction." Maxwell gave her a non-committal nod, but as she left, his expression shifted, just slightly. Less pride, more calculation. Later that afternoon, in a smaller follow-up meeting, the subject came up again. The London director pushed it hard. "He's authentic, the real deal. Put him on stage. Let the world see that your company is built on more than buzzwords and polished Ivy League faces." Maxwell glanced at Claude Reinhardt, seated across from him. The old diplomat gave a tight smile. And then someone Darius didn't know who said the line that would cut sharper than anything else that week. "We can't put a janitor on stage." It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. Deliberate. A fact. Spoken like gravity. Someone else laughed awkwardly. "Maybe in 5 years after we polish him up a bit." Maxwell didn't object. He didn't even flinch. And that silence said more than any answer could. Darius had won the room. But not the system. He'd proven himself publicly, brilliantly. But now the danger had grown. He was too smart to be dismissed, too visible to be ignored, yet still too black, too working class, too unpredictable for the polished image the company wanted on its stage. Later, Maxwell pulled Darius aside. "You did good," he said, offering a short nod. "Made me look smart." "Thank you," Darius said. "About the summit, I'll be taking that one personally." Maxwell interrupted. "You'll help build the deck, of course." Darius nodded. Slowly. The compliment had a leash attached to it. Maxwell glanced toward the hallway. "You were never supposed to be in that room. You get that, right?" Darius didn't answer. Maxwell leaned in, his voice dropping. "Know when to shine. Know when to step back. You want to stay in the room. You learn that balance." It wasn't advice. It was a warning. That night, Darius stood outside the building alone. He looked up at the windows on the 28th floor, lit with soft blue LED strips full of glass and light. He had stood in that room. He had owned it, spoke better, clearer, truer than anyone else. And still they couldn't see past the badge on his chest. They had heard his voice, but not his name. They had watched him perform, but never invited him to belong. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the prototype badge Maxwell's assistant had handed him that morning. It read, "Darius Cole. Strategy and turn 10. Access limited. Not executive. Not lead, not even analyst. Intern. It was the illusion of promotion. Just like the coffee mug. Just like the compliment. That badge was his ceiling. Unless he broke it himself. As he slipped the badge back into his pocket, a voice echoed from the revolving door behind him. Hey Darius. He turned. It was the Tokyo branch director. Alone. She smiled. I watched you, she said. You didn't just translate the pitch. You reframed it. Darius nodded. Cautious. Keep doing what you're doing, she added. But don't wait for permission. Then she stepped into a waiting car and disappeared. Darius stood alone on the curb. Heart racing. Hope bubbling somewhere deep, like carbonation trying to reach the surface. He looked up again at the building. And for the first time, he didn't feel beneath it. He felt inside it. But he also knew something else. The higher you climbed without a title, the more likely someone would try to push you off before you claimed one. The applause had been real. But the barrier was still there. And somewhere inside that building, someone had already made a decision. We can't put a janitor on stage. The press release went out at 9. It landed in inboxes across the building. Before Darius even finished his first cup of coffee, the subject line was bold, confident, celebratory. Alton Technologies launches Global Language Strategy Division. Led by promising intern. Darius froze when he saw it. He clicked. Scrolled. Read every word twice. The photo featured Connor Wexley, smiling beside Maxwell Crane in front of the Alton logo. Connor's teeth were white. His suit was fitted. The caption below named him the architect behind Alton's latest international breakthrough. The article praised his visionary localization framework and linguistic agility under pressure. There were quotes from board members calling him a rising star. One exec had even said, Connor's mastery of global tone positioning redefined our voice overnight. Darius read that sentence again. Slower. Then he checked the byline. He scrolled to the end. No mention of him. Not in the credits. Not in the acknowledgements. Not even in a thank you line. The pitch he'd written. The presentation he'd delivered. The phrasing he'd molded across 3 languages in under 2 minutes. Gone. Erased. His hands trembled on the keyboard. Down the hall, voices buzzed louder than usual. People were already reposting the article. Someone clapped in the next room. The company's Slack was blowing up. Connor's inbox was flooding with praise. Darius stood up slowly and walked toward the kitchen. His chest was tight. Connor was already there, pouring oat milk into a coffee cup like nothing had changed. Crazy morning, huh? He said, grinning. Darius stared at him. You're calling it your pitch? Connor paused, then shrugged, still smiling. You helped. That's why you're in strategy now, right? Everyone contributes. Darius swallowed hard. I wrote it. Connor raised an eyebrow. You collaborated. Maxwell's the one who made the call. I just delivered. You didn't, Darius said sharply. You froze. I spoke. Connor leaned back against the counter, holding his cup. You're emotional, man. You're making this a thing. Don't. Darius stepped forward. You're taking credit for work you didn't do. Connor's voice dropped, colder now. Do you want to be here or not? That landed like a slap. Connor straightened. Because if you start throwing accusations around, you're not going to last long. You think Crane's going to back you over me? Darius said nothing. But inside, the silence was howling. Later that day, Darius requested a meeting with Maxwell. It was brief. Maxwell didn't look surprised when Darius brought up the press release. You did the work, he acknowledged. No one's questioning that. Then why am I not named? Darius asked. Because, Maxwell said, folding his hands. It's easier to sell this if Connor's the face. Darius felt his pulse in his jaw. Easier for who? For investors. For press. For continuity. You think this company runs on merit alone? Maxwell leaned forward. You're brilliant, Darius. But you're not branded. You don't have a backstory they understand. I have a story. No one's asking to hear it. There was a long pause. Maxwell continued. You want to fight for recognition? Fine. But it'll come at a cost. You'll make enemies. Fast. And not just here. I don't care. You should. Maxwell stood. Don't confuse a moment of brilliance with job security. You want a career? Learn how to let other people win. Publicly so you can survive privately. It wasn't advice. It was a threat, laced in mentorship. That evening, Darius opened his company email. There was a new message from HR. Subject line: Professional Conduct Reminder. It was vague. 2 paragraphs long. a note about tone and cross-functional collaboration, and maintaining a team-first culture. No names mentioned, but the meaning was clear. He'd been warned. One more outburst, and he was out. He sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. The room was quiet. His heart wasn't. Then his phone buzzed. A text. From a blocked number. I saw what happened. You're not crazy. They do this all the time. Darius stared at the message. He didn't respond. Not yet. But he knew this. Someone inside the company was watching too. And they weren't on Connor's side. While mopping the floor during a late-night strategy session, Darius overhears plans that threaten immigrant workers across 4 states. The cleaning schedule wasn't supposed to put him there. The facilities team had reassigned floor rotations for the week, citing a coverage conflict. But Darius knew better. In buildings like Alton Technologies, everything was intentional, even the mistakes. He hadn't been on janitorial duty in weeks. Not since Maxwell had pulled him into the localization strategy meetings. Not since his pitch had ignited international praise before being stripped of credit and repackaged under Connor's name. So when his badge beeped open the glass doors of the 27th floor, Darius felt a chill, not from the air conditioning, but from the uncanny sense that he was being moved back into place. Quietly, efficiently, without paperwork. The return to the mop wasn't punishment. It was a message. The 27th floor was dimly lit. Most employees had gone home. The glass-walled conference rooms cast ghostly reflections in the hallway. Darius rolled his bucket past one, then another, until he heard something, a familiar voice cutting through the hum of H. He stopped. Inside conference room 27. Light spilled from a projector, illuminating 5 seated figures. No agenda was posted. No meeting was scheduled on the room's dashboard. But there they were, senior leadership from strategy, legal and compliance. And seated at the head, in a tailored navy blazer, was Claude Reinhardt. Darius moved his mop bucket quietly to the hallway corner. His ID still worked. His face, even after all these months, was still invisible. He picked up a rag, stepped back toward the glass, and began wiping the already clean divider while angling his ear toward the room. The conversation inside was already in progress. Saves us close to 11 million, one man said. And that's just in phase 1. Another voice chimed in. You're talking about layoffs? No. Contractor terminations. There's a difference. Claude leaned forward. Be specific. The first voice continued. 4 states. Illinois, Texas, California, Georgia. Mostly immigrant-heavy janitorial vendors. Not direct employees. We cut the contracts. Roll out new automation systems. Consolidate tasks to 1 vendor per region. Let the vendors take the blame. Darius blinked. The words didn't fully hit him at first. He kept wiping the glass. Slower now. Majority of these workers don't speak fluent English, someone else said. They'll get the notices, but they won't understand the details. Many won't even file disputes. They won't know how, another added. Language barrier protects us. Claude's voice was cool and calm. And what about optics? We keep this internal. Someone replied. It's not a layoff. It's optimization. Claude nodded once. Label it under Project Atlas. Push the memo through strategic growth. D&I doesn't need to be looped in until after implementation. Another voice, feminine and crisp, chimed in. And what about the janitor in strategy? The one who speaks 9 languages? Darius? Claude asked, his tone stiffening. Yes. He's been spotted in a few shared doc folders. His metadata tags show engagement with internal memos. Claude's voice turned sharp. He was supposed to be temporary. One of the others shrugged. He still has access, though. Quiet, but curious. We should consider it. Then freeze his clearance by EOD, Claude said flatly. No more document visibility. We can't have a language wildcard floating around while we're planning this. Darius's heart pounded in his ears. He moved away from the glass, quick, but quiet. They were terminating the contracts of hundreds, maybe thousands of immigrant workers across 4 states. No severance, no translation, no public statement. And they were weaponizing language. To do it. The very thing that had given Darius power was now being used as a trap. He walked quickly to the service stairwell and ducked inside, breathing hard. In that moment, he wasn't thinking of himself. He was thinking of the janitor who brought him coffee in the morning. The Filipino woman who mopped the lobby floor every night with gospel music in her earbuds. The Honduran man who asked Darius to help translate his niece's school letter last week. They didn't know. Not yet. and they wouldn't know until the checks stopped coming, and the calls stopped answering, unless someone told them. Unless he did. But telling them meant blowing everything up. The NDA, the HR warning, the fragile position he still held as a temp on strategy projects. Maxwell could bury him in one email. Still, Darius couldn't unhear what he'd just heard. He returned to the supply closet, closed the door, and stared at the mop bucket for a long time. The next morning, he logged in early. The Atlas folder he'd flagged was gone. Not archived, not restricted, deleted. His access had already been shut down. He clicked through folder after folder, but the doors were locked. Then a system alert flashed at the top of his screen. Access denied, role permissions modified. He sat back. So that's how it would be. That afternoon he approached Maxwell in the hallway. "I need a minute," he said. Maxwell didn't break stride. "Now's not the time." "I heard what they said last night." Maxwell stopped. The hallway was empty, except for the two of them. A pause stretched between them, taut as wire. "I don't know what you think you heard," Maxwell said coolly. "But meetings like that don't concern your role." "They concern people I used to be," Darius said. "People who don't get memos. They get silent." Maxwell's jaw clenched slightly. Then he leaned in. "Let me explain something to you. You've made it further than anyone expected. But this crusade you're flirting with, it's suicide." Darius didn't move. "You think this company was built on transparency?" Maxwell said. "No, it was built on risk calculation. And right now you're becoming a liability. You're about to erase hundreds of workers." Maxwell's voice dropped. "Not my call. And if you want to stay employed, it won't be yours either." Darius's eyes narrowed. "I was never supposed to be in that meeting. I was supposed to be cleaning it." Maxwell looked at him for a long time. Then he said exactly, and walked away. Darius spent the evening outside the building. He sat in the lot across the street, watching the office windows light up and fade. He thought about the smell of bleach on his mother's apron, the ache in his father's back from pushing grocery pallets across concrete floors. They had taught him to survive, but they had also taught him not to let fear kill his voice. He made a choice. He opened his laptop, pulled up the printer logs, tracked internal versions of Project Atlas from the week before. Most were scrubbed, but not all. One outdated memo, an early draft, was still buried inside a shared folder misfiled under internal wellness. He downloaded it, all 32 pages, and in the bottom right corner of page 1 was something no one else would have noticed. A digital watermark, draft prepared by C. Reinhardt. He smiled. Sometimes systems forget that ghosts can read. Now he must choose, stay silent and safe, or speak out and risk everything. Rachel Kim had seemed like the exception. In a company where Darius Cole usually passed unremarked, she had paused mid-stride one evening when she saw him in the hallway, wiping a spill. She'd asked his name, she'd asked where he was from, she'd invited him to lunch. She'd said she believed in him. And for a moment, in Darius's heart, that felt like a lifeline. After Darius's near expulsion from the strategic pitch meeting, where his voice had been heard but his role denied, Rachel slipped him a note in the days that followed. "Meet me in 10A at 6:00 p.m. I have something to show you." He'd come. She'd pulled a stack of proposals from her bag, not ones with his name, but ones he had shaped, and quietly credited him. "You deserve to see work you've influenced." Her respect felt like oxygen. But ambition in corporate America runs cold when stakes rise. It was a Monday morning. The sun angled into the glass facade of Crane Global's headquarters in shimmering rectangles across the polished lobby floor. Darius arrived early, carrying the weight of sleepless nights. His reflection in the elevator doors looked tired, wary, hopeful. Still, he rounded the corner toward the HR suite, heart thudding. He was going to file a formal complaint, missing credit, stolen proposals, selective credit assignment, and the implicit racism he had endured for months. He rehearsed phrases. "I believe in this company. I deserve acknowledgement. I will not be silent." As he stepped into the HR hallway, he spotted Rachel. She stood in front of a frosted glass office door labeled Director of Strategic Initiatives, dressed in a sleek blazer. She looked distracted, more severe than usual. When she saw him, she paused, then resumed walking past without greeting. "Rachel?" Darius called softly, stepping into her path. She offered a tight smile. "Darius, good morning. Can we talk about what I sent you last week?" He held an envelope, the detailed notes of his contributions, proof email chains. She stiffened, closing the distance. I'm sorry, there's no time. My schedule's packed. He lowered the envelope. I thought you meant you would back me. Rachel's eyes flickered with regret. Or something darker. I do. I do. But this week I'm under review for the promotion. I need to tread carefully. It hit him. Her loyalty was conditional. Her support existed until her own advancement could be threatened. Inside her office an hour later, Rachel typed furiously at her computer. Darius sat across, hands clasped. He tried not to stare at the framed photograph of her speaking at some university event. A polished figure, the rising executive. Rachel, he began, voice low. I'm not asking for a favor. I just want fairness. The pitch, the languages, the insights, they were mine. Nobody credited me. She exhaled. I know. And I'm sorry. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. I already fought with marketing, with legal to include your name. But they pushed back. They said it would complicate the narrative. They said you're not the face we want. Darius's throat tightened. So you told them no? Her lips hardened. I tried. I fought. But if I overreach now, if the board thinks I'm stirring trouble on behalf of a janitor, I risk the entire promotion. He leaned forward. You promised mentorship. You said you believed in me. She looked down. I do. I still do. But promises don't always survive corporate battlefield politics. I can't go down for this yet. Tension built in the room like a low hum. Darius pressed. So where does that leave me? Rachel swallowed. I'll make sure you're on projects. I'll recommend you to division heads. But I have to keep my own head above water. He leaned back, cold fury settling like ice. This was betrayal. Slow and polite. Over the following days, Darius felt the wall push closer. His assignments shrank. Opportunities he had expected vanished. The colleagues who once glanced at him began to ignore him again. He opened his laptop one morning. His inbox was sparse. He checked the collaboration boards. His name omitted where it once appeared. His stomach churned. Ben? A new blow. One afternoon, the head of operations, Richard Wallace, the senior VP who had opposed adding the janitor's name to public materials, called Rachel into his office. Darius, unknowingly walking past their glass-walled conference room, saw her standing, white-knuckled, arguing quietly. Wallace's hand moved toward his phone, perhaps drafting a favorable memo. She shook her head, voice too soft to hear. She turned, shoulders rigid. He watched them as they exchanged a small file, a flash drive, and Rachel's gaze flickered toward the hallway where he passed, before she dropped her eye. He moved on before confrontation, but inside him something snapped. That evening, Darius trudged to the locker room. The same row of lockers where janitors stored mops, gloves, dusters. His locker stood at the end, unremarkable. He shoved open the door, and found it empty. His box of keepsakes gone. His tools, his uniforms, everything, erased. He felt his breath hitch. Someone had cleaned him out. He stood frozen in the hallway, heart pounding. On his phone, he dialed Rachel's extension, but it went directly to voicemail. He typed a message, Rachel, locker's empty. Why? Call me back. No response. In his nightmare dreams, this was the moment when you'd expect an ally to stand up, but in waking life, betrayal tastes bitter and quiet. 2 days later, Thursday, Darius made his way to HR. He carried printed documents, emails, internal proposals, time-stamped edits. He stepped into the waiting area, heart steadying itself with resolve. He had to do this properly. He asked the receptionist, "Is Ms. Leonard in today?" She nodded. Darius exhaled and walked down the hallway to the HR head's door. Elizabeth Leonard. The nameplate gleamed. He pushed open. The room smelled like paper and recycled air. Miss Leonard looked up from her desk, her expression polite but taut. On one side, a tall filing cabinet. On the other, visitor chairs. "Mr. Cole, good morning," she gestured. Her voice was soft but professional. "Thank you." He set his documents on her desk. "I'm filing a formal complaint. I believe I've been discriminated against by omission, by credit theft, by selective exclusion. I'd like this documented." Ms. Leonard reached for a standard HR form, but paused, distracted, as though hearing something far off. Suddenly, her computer pinged. The screen flickered. She frowned. She clicked a few keys. "That is odd." She stood and walked to the back of her office, opening a locked cabinet and retrieving a backup hard drive box. She came back and set it next to the documents. I need to run a system check, she said. For security, our servers logged a recent rollback. Some records were reverted. I'm sorry. It looks like system backups are incomplete. Darius suppressed his rising panic. You mean it's possible files vanished? She nodded. I can't confirm yet. But yes. If recent changes were overwritten, your complaint might vanish. He forced calm. Please document that possibility. I need confirmation in writing. She opened the drawer, got a signed acknowledgement pad. I will do that. He packed his papers. Thank you. He turned to leave, but paused. Ms. Leonard, my locker was emptied 2 days ago. Could someone from HR check security footage? Her face froze. That's beyond standard. I doubt video is accessible, but I'll see what I can do. He nodded. Heart pounding. Later that day, Rachel found him in the break room. He stood by the window, looking out at the skyline. The coffee machine hissed. She cleared her throat behind him. Darius. She sounded small. He didn't turn. You said you'd fight. You said you believed in me. She swallowed. I did. He turned slowly, eyes tired. But now you won't speak up. And someone emptied my locker. My complaint may vanish from HR systems. Do you know anything about that? Rachel flinched. Her face paled. She stared at her fingertips. He pressed Rachel. Look me in the eye. She closed her eyes, then opened them, meeting his gaze. Yes, she whispered. I saw them copy files. I was told to stay out of it. I was threatened that if my name surfaced in these complaints, I'd lose everything. They had me sign something, a gag order. Her voice trembled. She wiped a tear. I tried to pull back, tried to help quietly, but they cornered me. I'm sorry. Anger stretched tight in Darius's chest, but also sorrow. He once believed in her. Now he felt the sharpness of betrayal. She reached for his arm. He shrugged away gently. I have to do this myself. Rachel's eyes glistened. I understand. That night, Darius sat on his small couch in his modest apartment, phone in hand. He hadn't heard from Rachel. He re-examined the day's moments. Rachel whispering with Wallace, copying files, the HR system rollback. His breathing tightened with realization. Someone inside was orchestrating suppression at every level. He opened his laptop, drafted an encrypted email to a trusted journalist contact, someone outside the company's sphere. He wrote, They've deleted files. They emptied my locker. My mentor was forced silent. If anything happens, I have proof. I need help. He hesitated, finger hovering over send. Then he typed a separate backup copying every document to a personal drive. Off-site, he shielded it, encrypted it. He closed his eyes, mind racing. Then his phone buzzed. A masked number. He opened it, heart pounding. The text read, delete that file. Stop. Now. His skin prickled. Who knew? Someone inside. Someone watching him. And then another message. You're too visible. He stared at the glowing screen. The wall beyond his apartment window stretched dark, silent. He gloved his hands and leaned forward. A plan formed, brittle but alive. He'd been cornered, but they hadn't silenced him yet. He pressed reply, fingers trembling. You can't threaten me into oblivion. I will not be erased. He set the phone down. He stood. He paced. His jaw clenched. He knew the next move would cost more than he ever expected. In the dead of night, the silence in his apartment felt heavier than ever, and the air crackled with danger. The next morning, Darius arrives at work to discover his HR complaint has been mysteriously deleted, and his locker stands wide open, completely emptied. A hidden camera caught a senior VP using a racial slur. But the footage vanishes before the board can see it, except Darius knows who copied the file, and where it might still be. The day after his locker was emptied, and his HR complaint disappeared, Darius Cole walked through Crane Global's marbled lobby, with a new kind of weight, pressing on his chest, not defeat, not yet, but the slow, suffocating realization that this building wasn't just ignoring him, it was erasing him. He kept his head down. ID badge clipped to a borrowed janitorial shirt, the only one he could find in the back closet. Nobody looked his way. Not the receptionist who used to nod. Not the project manager whose decks he'd rewritten in 3 languages. Darius had become a ghost inside the walls he helped shine. But ghosts see everything. That's when he noticed the 2 IT staffers whispering near the elevator. Both wore black polos, both holding file cases, But one of them, Jonah, had once helped Darius recover a corrupted document. After hours, he was one of the few people who spoke to Darius like a person, not a role. Jonah glanced around and muttered to the other tech. That footage shouldn't have existed anyway. We wiped the cloud last night. Everything? The other asked. Everything, except what was on the portable. And that, well, I don't know where that went. They stepped into the elevator. Doors closed. Darius's pulse spiked. That evening, under the quiet hum of fluorescent lights in the service hallway, Darius approached Jonah. Hey, Darius said casually, pushing a cart past him. Rough day? Jonah looked up startled, then relaxed. Oh, man, yeah, too much cleanup upstairs. Darius tilted his head. Legal? Or technical? Jonah hesitated. Bit of both. Everyone's on edge since that file surfaced. Darius leaned in slightly. The one with Wallace? Jonah's lips tightened. You didn't hear that from me. Darius stepped back. I didn't hear anything. But his mind was racing. Jonah sighed, looking around. Off the record? Someone found surveillance footage from the strategy room. Late night, Wallace forgot the mics are always live after 7 p.m. And? Darius asked, heartbeat thudding. Jonah leaned closer. He used the N-word. Talking about the janitorial team, said the company should scrub them out. Especially that polyglot. Darius's blood turned ice. Board was supposed to see the clip this morning, Jonah continued. But when they clicked the link, it was gone. Gone. Darius repeated. Wiped. Every copy. Except the one copied locally. And I don't know who grabbed that. But Darius did. 2 weeks earlier. During a late shift, Darius had caught a glimpse of Rachel backing up files to a flash drive in her office. She'd been jumpy, nervous, glancing over her shoulder every few seconds. She thought no one had seen. But janitors move quietly. Now he knew what she had copied. He waited until 7:12 p.m., when the floor emptied. He took the service stairwell and slipped up to the 5th floor, where the director offices were. Rachel's light was still on. She looked up when he knocked softly. Darius, she said, standing abruptly. You shouldn't be here. I need to ask you something. And I need the truth. She hesitated. Close the door. He stepped in and shut it behind him. I know about the Wallace footage, he said. And I know you copied it. Her face froze. I saw you. That night. You backed up more than just proposals. Rachel sat slowly. I was going to delete it. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Do you still have it? No, she whispered. But I know where it might be. Rachel walked over to her shelf and pulled a slim silver box. A portable hard drive. This isn't the copy, but it points to the device that held it. There's a file log. Darius took it carefully. Why didn't you say anything? Because, she said quietly. Wallace is powerful. And you're already in danger. Darius looked her dead in the eye. He called me a slur. That's not just a policy issue. That's a legacy I've carried since I was old enough to read lips. She nodded, tears threatening to break through. If you go after him, they'll come after you harder. He stood. Then I better make it count. Back in his apartment, Darius connected the drive to his encrypted laptop. Inside, Rachel's logs were meticulous. Timestamps, file names, access codes. One name stood out. Surav RM5 Wallace. Transferred to EXT. User. Inter.Connor. Connor. The Harvard intern. The one who'd taken credit for Darius's work in the press release. The one who barely said a word, but smiled for the cameras. The one who had been present during that same late-night meeting. The twist was nauseating. Darius scrolled deeper and found the last access point. Not on-site. Off-campus. An IP address near the Riverfront Tech Co-op. A local startup incubator where interns often worked on side projects. Connor had copied the file and taken it off-site. Why? That night, Darius sat in the corner of a dusty co-working lounge. Hoodie up, laptop glowing. He tapped into the Riverfront network, scanning for file traces. Most public terminals had been scrubbed, but on one buried in a temp folder was a single auto-saved VLC cache. Partial playback. He opened it. Wallace appeared on screen, pacing in the dim boardroom, glass of something amber in his hand. I don't care how many degrees that janitor has. Wallace snarled. We are not letting some nagger speak for the company. A pause, murmurs, laughter. The clip skipped. Darius's hands trembled. This wasn't just evidence. It was poison. He downloaded the clip, encrypted it, and backed it up 6 different ways. Then he left. Back at Crane Global, news broke internally that an attempt was made to falsify internal footage. An internal memo blamed unauthorized access, but refused to name the culprit. Meanwhile, rumors swirled. Rachel stopped replying to messages. Connor was on vacation. Wallace's office lights stayed off. But Darius was just getting started. He drafted an email to the legal department. This is protected whistleblower evidence. The footage exists. It was accessed, copied, and removed from internal servers. I have the logs and the origin. Do not cover this up. If action is not taken, I will release this to national media within 72 hours. Darius Cole. He copied himself, and an anonymous journalist, and a civil rights lawyer. 3 hours later, his building pass stopped working. Darius returned home to find his apartment door ajar. Inside, nothing was stolen. Not visibly. But the laptop he'd used to decrypt the footage. It had been moved. The lid was closed differently. A corner of the desk scuffed. He opened it. The files were gone. But Darius had already uploaded everything to the cloud. Hidden, mirrored, untraceable. He stared into the empty space of his room. The only sound his breath. Someone was trying to scare him. But they didn't know. He had seen something even more damning in the surveillance footage. Not just the slur. In the reflection of the boardroom glass, someone else had been present. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Someone who had nodded. Darius rewinds the footage, and freezes the frame, and sees the reflection of a second executive silently watching Wallace's rant. It wasn't just him. There was a second witness. A bigger one. Someone still inside the company. And Darius knows exactly who copied the file, and where it might still be. Fired, doxxed, and unable to find work. Darius cleans houses under a fake name. But a stranger recognizes him from a viral leak. She offers him a laptop, a plane ticket, and a chance to fight back. They didn't just fire him, they made sure he couldn't be hired anywhere else. The morning after his encrypted whistleblower message hit legal, Darius Cole's email account was locked. Then came the call from HR, curt, final, barely masking fear. You've violated internal confidentiality policies. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. By noon, his face and name had leaked onto Reddit, corporate forums, even LinkedIn, screenshots of his ID badge, claims of misconduct, unstable behavior, and data theft. A whisper campaign spun up overnight, and within days, his inbox turned into a graveyard of rejected applications. No callbacks, no interviews. Then came the doxing. His old address, the one he'd moved from a year ago, posted online, followed by a stream of anonymous texts, threats, slurs. Should have stayed in your place. Clean floors, not company secrets. Nodders don't belong in boardrooms. He moved apartments again. Changed his number. Disconnected completely. For the first time in 5 years, he was invisible again. Not by choice. Under the alias Devin King, he found work cleaning luxury apartments in Midtown. Cash under the table. No questions asked. No background checks. Just mops, ammonia, and hours of silence. Some days he scrubbed the same kind of marble countertops he once stood beside, while advising executives on international expansion. Other days, he emptied trash bins in penthouses, where framed stock certificates hung on the wall, awards from the very firm that blacklisted him. His hands cracked from the bleach. His back ached from bending. But he kept his head down. He was surviving, not living. Until one afternoon, he was cleaning a townhome in the West End, a sleek, modern duplex with cold lighting and granite surfaces. The client was never home. Just a note on the counter, "Don't touch the bedroom drawers." Devin followed orders. He wore gloves, moved like a shadow, played music in one earbud to keep the silence from swallowing him whole. As he bent over to vacuum under the dining table, a voice behind him asked softly, "Is your name really Devin?" He froze. Slowly he turned. A woman stood at the top of the staircase. Mid-40s, caramel-skinned, a silk scarf wrapped around her curls. Her eyes were careful, intelligent. Darius straightened. Sorry, I didn't know anyone was home." She stepped closer, studying him. "I've seen you before," she said. His breath caught. "I don't think so." "Yes," she nodded. "I have. Online. That video." His throat tightened. "I think you have the wrong person." She raised an eyebrow. The janitor who spoke 9 languages, who exposed Crane Global, who disappeared. She wasn't guessing. She knew. He didn't respond. I'm not here to out you, she said gently. I'm here to ask you something. He stared. Silent. If you had the tools again, a laptop protection, maybe a platform, would you still fight? Darius blinked. I don't even have a home internet connection right now. She smiled faintly. Then walked into the hallway and returned with a small leather bag. She opened it, pulled out a laptop still sealed in plastic. Then a small envelope. A plane ticket, she said. And a contact. Someone who believes in what you started. He couldn't speak. Why? He finally asked, voice dry. Because I was once undocumented, she said. I cleaned houses in silence for 10 years. Then someone stood up, and I found my voice. I never forgot what it felt like to be erased. She set the bag down and walked to the door. Think about it, she said. But not for too long. Time's running out. The door closed behind her. Darius sat down on the clean floor, the smell of lemon polish still hanging in the air. His hands trembled as he unwrapped the laptop. And in that moment, broke, blacklisted, and buried by a system that tried to erase him, he felt something return.
Not revenge.
Purpose. As Darius powers up the laptop, a message pings the screen before he can even open a browser. It reads, "Welcome back. We've been watching. You're not alone." Alongside it, an audio file labeled, "They've lied to everyone. Play this first." From Arabic to Mandarin, Darius uses every tongue he knows to expose the corporation's racism across international media. But just as the story catches fire, a cease and desist letter arrives at his door. The laptop booted to a sterile desktop screen. Blank, save for a single folder titled Voiceback. Darius hesitated, his fingers trembling. The apartment was dark, quiet. The air thick with a silence that wasn't peace. It was anticipation. Or maybe pressure. It didn't matter anymore. He clicked. Inside were files. Audio, documents, video clips, translations. Some were from his own past recordings. Others from the whistleblower cache. But one stood out. The audio file labeled, "They've lied to everyone. Play this first." He hit play. A female voice came through. Clear, smooth, deliberate. To those who speak only English. This is the truth you've been denied. To the world, in your own languages. Here is what they've hidden. The voice switched, suddenly speaking flawless Mandarin. Crane Global actively removed evidence of internal racism. Then Arabic. They suppressed a video of a senior executive using a racial slur against black staff. Then Spanish. They erased a man's legacy because he wasn't the color they expected innovation to come from. French. This is no longer a corporate issue. This is a global one. Darius sat back, spine stiff. Whoever put this together knew exactly what they were doing. But something else burned inside him. If this anonymous voice could do it, so could he. He didn't just speak 9 languages, he lived in them. Every syllable he'd learned was a rebellion. Every accent he'd mastered was a bridge. And now, every one of them would be a weapon against silence. He called the contact from the envelope. A woman named Aline Torres, a Brazilian-born journalist running a rogue international media collective out of Lisbon. Within minutes, her voice crackled through a secure line. "I've been waiting," she said. "The footage you sent us was just the start. You still want to publish?" Darius asked. "Even knowing what they'll do, I want the world to hear it. But not in one voice. In every voice." He smiled faintly. "I can do that." Over the next 5 days, Darius barely slept. He set up in a borrowed studio space above a record shop, dim lighting, concrete floors, a single mic, and soundproofing made of taped-up egg cartons. It didn't matter. He wasn't building a podcast. He was building a reckoning. He recorded the first message in English, slow, intentional, raw. "My name is Darius Cole. I was a janitor at Crane Global. I was also the man behind their billion-dollar pitch. I was the one who heard what no one else wanted to admit. And I was the one they silenced." Then in Arabic, a fluid, crisp rendition of the same story. Then Mandarin. Then Swahili, Portuguese, Tagalog, French, Hindi, Spanish. Each version wasn't just translated. It was adapted, emotionally coded, contextually alive. He didn't just say the words. He felt them, and his voice made others feel too. Align's team stitched the videos together, adding subtitles. images and blurred documents, all with a single consistent watermark. 9 languages, 1 truth. They released the first video, English, on a Thursday morning. By lunchtime, it had 80,000. By midnight, 1,000,000. But what truly made it explode was the cascade. One by one, over the course of 24 hours, each version dropped, targeted for different time zones. Mandarin first at Beijing sunrise, Portuguese for São Paulo lunchtime, Hindi before Mumbai's evening news. By the second night, CNN International was running pieces titled, "The Janitor Who Outspoke a Corporation." Al Jazeera aired the Arabic version uncut. African diaspora groups began translating the Swahili video into local dialects. European outlets subtitled the French version. TikTok creators lip-synced his words in duets. Hashtags flooded in. 9 languages, 1 truth. Darius did that. They tried to erase him. Justice doesn't speak 1 language, but not everyone celebrated. By the third morning, a quiet, chilling knock hit his apartment door. He didn't answer. He peered through the peephole. A courier. No words, just a slim envelope, sealed with Crane Global's logo. Inside, a formal cease and desist letter, signed by 3 corporate attorneys. You are hereby instructed to immediately discontinue all unauthorized dissemination of confidential internal materials, cease all public statements regarding Crane Global, and remove all associated media from public domains. Failure to comply within 24 hours will result in civil and criminal liability, including but not limited to breach of NDA, defamation, and damages. At the bottom, a postscript. You will not win this. Darius read it twice, then he folded it and set it on fire. The next morning, Darius opens his encrypted inbox to a new message, this time not from the media, not from a lawyer, but from inside Crane Global. The subject line reads, "They're lying to the board. I have proof. Meet me tonight." Labeled a disgruntled former employee. Darius faces a lawsuit that could bankrupt him. But a secret ally from inside reaches out. He agrees to meet, but the alley is dark, and someone else is already waiting. The cease and desist had been the first shot. The lawsuit was the war. Within 48 hours of the global rollout of his multilingual exposé, Darius Cole found his name attached to a 76-page legal complaint filed in federal court. Crane Global Viri. Darius Cole. The document called him a disgruntled former employee, an opportunistic content thief, a delusional janitor with a grudge. They claimed he had stolen proprietary information, doctored footage, violated multiple NDAs, and recklessly endangered the company's international operations. They wanted $10 million in damages, and an injunction that would erase every trace of his story from the internet. The news broke like a lightning strike. Cable anchors debated whether he was a truth teller or attention seeker. Op-eds questioned the reliability of a man without a college degree. Think pieces flooded Twitter. Does speaking 9 languages mean you understand integrity? Friends vanished. His bank account froze. And for the second time in a month, Darius found himself staring at his reflection in a window, wondering how much of him they had left to take. He shut off his phone, but the damage spiraled without him. At dusk, his email pinged. Just once. A new message slid through the encrypted server he'd used with Aline. From Clean Access at ProtonMail. Subject: They're lying to the board. I have proof. Meet me tonight. Location: Iron Alley, behind the Civic Records building. Midnight. Come alone. P.S. You not crazy. I saw what Wallace did. I know who else knew. Darius stared at the screen, mind spinning. Someone inside was breaking ranks. But why now? And why him? He opened a burner phone and called Aline. They want me to meet them, he said. She didn't respond right away. Do it, she finally said. But record everything. Don't trust verify. I'm already in too deep, he said. No, Darius. Now you're in just deep enough to matter. The air was thick and wet with autumn rain as Darius slipped through the backlot of the Civic Records building at 11. Iron Alley wasn't really an alley, more like a narrow trench of loading docks between 2 government properties. Faint red bulbs blinked overhead. A single rusted vent dripped water onto the pavement, its rhythm the only sound. He waited.
12:03.
Still no one. Then a shadow appeared at the far end. Moving slowly, deliberately, Darius tensed. Reached into his pocket for the small mic he'd clipped to his shirt earlier. It was live, transmitting to Aline's server. The figure stepped into the glow of a flickering security light. It was Rachel. Her hoodie was pulled tight around her face. eyes darting. Darius, she whispered, stepping closer. You sent the email? He asked. She shook her head. No, I didn't. But I came because I heard someone else did. Darius felt his spine tighten. What do you mean? I overheard something at work, she said, voice trembling. There's someone else, someone deeper in. They saw internal memos. The board has never been shown the real footage. They were fed a fake report. He leaned in. And this person's talking? Rachel hesitated. They're scared, but they left breadcrumbs. Darius narrowed his eyes. Breadcrumbs? She nodded. Access logs. Internal chat screenshots. One of them includes Wallace's name and the timestamp from the night of the slur. If that connects with the footage you have. Suddenly, a sharp sound, metal clinking against pavement. They both turned. The alley's far end lit up slightly, the motion-triggered lights reacting to a second figure. Darius stepped forward, heart pounding. Who's that? He asked. Rachel's breath caught. I don't know. The figure was taller, broader, dressed in a black coat and dark hat. His face remained hidden. He didn't walk toward them. He watched. Darius instinctively pulled Rachel behind him. Get behind the dumpster. If I move toward him and he runs, follow my voice. Rachel obeyed. Darius took one step forward. Then two. The man didn't move. He just raised a gloved hand and pointed, slowly toward a service door that led into the Civic Records building. Then turned and disappeared into the darkness without a word. Darius jogged over. The door wasn't locked. Inside, taped to the wall above a janitor's closet, was a manila envelope. His name written across the front. Darius Cole. He opened it slowly. Inside, printouts. Dozens. Internal chat logs. Legal brief drafts. One with Wallace's name in red ink. Next to the line, footage too inflammatory. Clean version required. Use Connor's edit. Beneath that, a handwritten note. What you have is real. What they showed, the board was not. I was there. This company doesn't deserve protection. You do. Thus Darius looked at Rachel. Who's it? She whispered. He shook his head. I don't know yet. By the time they left the alley, the envelope tucked in his coat, Darius felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Leverage. They hadn't just fired him. They hadn't just lied. They had committed fraud, knowingly, to their own board. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a scandal. But as they reached the street, Darius's burner phone vibrated again. Another email. From shadowloop@protonmail.com. Subject. The lawsuit was just a distraction. Message. They're moving files tonight. Real files. Archives. Come now. Or it's gone. Location Warehouse 14. Crane Global Storage Annex. Rachel read over his shoulder. Mouth dry. They're trying to erase everything, she whispered. Darius nodded. Then we stop them before they do. He agrees to meet. But when Darius arrives at the storage annex, the main lights are off, the gates half open, and someone is already inside. A flashlight flickers, then vanishes. He steps forward and the door slams shut behind him. One by one, undocumented janitors and cafeteria workers start coming forward with hidden testimonies. A national journalist calls Darius with 4 chilling words. You're not the only one. The inside of Warehouse 14 smelled like damp paper and panic. The massive metal door slammed behind Darius like a gunshot, its echo chasing him through the darkened corridors of stacked crates and steel shelves. For a moment, he stood frozen, pulse hammering in his ears. The silence was unnatural, too clean, too still, not even rats. Then a flashlight beam flickered near the far aisle. Someone was here. Hello? Darius called, voice tight but steady. The light went out. Footsteps retreated. He followed carefully, quietly, weaving past boxes labeled Archive, HR and Confidential Impellicini records. His shoes scraped the concrete, the air thick with mildew and secrets. At the back of the warehouse, behind a column of crates, he found what the email had warned about, a plastic bin marked Retention, Non-Managerial Staff. It was halfway open, file folders sticking out like ribs. Inside, name, dozen, hundreds, mostly Latino, African and Southeast Asian names. All handwritten, all categorized by first name only. No last names, no IDs, just vague notations. Speaks limited English, unknown visa, temporary, unconfirmed. Some had red stars beside them. Darius pulled out a folder labeled Delgado, Manuela. Inside, shift reports, behavior logs, discipline warnings for infractions like speaking Spanish too often and asking about pay discrepancy. He kept flipping. Wijin, report for bringing own lunch from home, not cafeteria compliant. Sadiq, F note, takes extended breaks for prayer. The racism wasn't always loud. But here it was documented. Normalized. Buried. He snapped photos. Every page. Every name. Every star. Back in his apartment an hour later, Darius uploaded the images to his encrypted drive and sent an urgent email to Elaine. They're not just erasing me. They've been erasing all of us. Her response came within minutes. I know someone who needs to see this. Don't go dark. It's time. 3 days passed like a slow explosion. The photos leaked on a new page. A line launched. cranevoices.com. No names, no faces, just redacted testimonies and documents. And one sentence in bold. If they've silenced you too, we're listening. The inbox filled overnight. It started with one email from an anonymous account. I cleaned floors at HQ. They told me not to speak Spanish in front of executives. Said it made them uncomfortable. I was deported the same week I asked for a raise. Then another. I was cafeteria staff. A white intern threw away my tray and said I looked too dirty to serve food. I was told to let it go or let go. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Darius read each one, heart cracking wider with every word. These weren't random anecdotes. This was systemic, coordinated, polite brutality dressed as protocol. And worse, many of them couldn't speak up publicly. Most were undocumented. Others feared ICE retaliation. Others had been paid under the table, left with no legal records of their labor. But slowly, cautiously, a few agreed to talk. The first to speak on camera was Marisol, a soft-spoken woman from Guatemala who had worked janitorial shifts at Crane Global for 5 years. She wore a face mask and a hoodie to protect her identity, her voice dubbed by an actress. Her story aired in a split screen with Darius's footage. They told me not to make eye contact with executives. I was told not to clean when they were walking. Once, I found a board member crying in the stairwell. I offered him a tissue, and he yelled at me, said I shouldn't speak unless I'm spoken to. When I reported it, I was told I had a bad attitude. I was gone by the end of the week. Then came Bashir, a Somali dishwasher. Then Felicia, a Nigerian floor manager. Then Manuel, the same Delgado Darius had found in the warehouse file. Each had a different accent, but their stories rhymed. Invisible until punished. Fired without warning. Replaced without a word. The media picked it up slowly, then all at once. The narrative changed. Darius was no longer just the janitor with 9 languages. He was the trigger for a flood of buried voices. CNN aired a 7-minute special. BBC ran a segment titled, The Immigrants Who Were Told to Stay Silent. BuzzFeed released a feature called Erased: How a Tech Giant Hit Its Brown Workforce. The pressure on Crane Global mounted. Executives gave dry, clipped statements. Wallace disappeared from the public schedule. The company tried to pivot, tweeting photos of diversity events and community outreach. But the damage was done. The story was out of their control. Then came the call. Darius was sitting on the floor, knees up, surrounded by papers, when his burner buzzed. Unknown number. He answered with hesitation. A woman's voice came through, firm, clear, national anchor crisp. Mr. Cole? This is Zora Banks with the Washington Post.
His breath caught. Yes.
We've been following your uploads. I was going to ask for an interview, but something else came across my desk today. A pause. She lowered her voice. It's not just janitors, not just cafeteria workers. What do you mean? He asked. There are files from other companies, partner companies, contractors, sub-firms tied to Crane. Similar patterns, same warnings, same silencing. Darius was quiet. Zora continued. And then this memo came in through our tip line, from a private equity firm that holds shares in Crane. It mentions a name I think you'll recognize.
Who's?
She exhaled. Maxwell Crane. Darius sat up straighter. Zora's voice hardened. He didn't just hear the slur, he covered it up. A long silence. Then she said the 4 words that stopped him cold. You're not the only one. Zora continues, her voice dropping. We have a whistleblower inside the executive team, but they'll only meet you. They said you're the only one they trust, and they want to hand you something that could burn it all down. Under oath and in front of millions, the company's CEO denies everything. Until Darius walks in with the flash drive. Just before the video plays, the screen goes black. The hearing room was built for drama. Rows of oak desks, green felt lining, and microphones that caught even the breath between lies. It looked more like a theater than a place for truth. But that day, it was standing room only. C-SPAN's cameras were live. So were CNN's. The headlines crawled across the bottom of every network. Crane Global faces congressional inquiry over whistleblower accusations. CEO Maxwell Crane to testify under oath. The chairman tapped the gavel 3 times. The room fell into a hush. Maxwell Crane took his seat. Blue tie. Smooth blazer. Calm face. He didn't sweat. Didn't blink too often. Spoke like someone born into microphones. Mr. Crane, began Congresswoman Renee Thompson. Voice crisp. You are aware you are testifying under penalty of perjury? I am Congresswoman. Maxwell replied with practiced warmth. And do you deny the allegations made by former employee Darius Cole? A pause. A breath. I do, he said flatly. These claims are false, misleading, and coordinated. Mr. Cole was terminated for cause. He violated security protocol and misrepresented his role at Crane Global. Murmurs rolled through the room. In the back row behind a velvet rope, Darius sat in silence. Hair pulled back, simple black shirt, flash drive tucked in the inside pocket of his jacket. Zora sat next to him, legs crossed, eyes locked forward. She hadn't blinked in 5 minutes. You good? She whispered. He nodded, but his hand trembled in his lap. Across the room, Rachel sat stiffly beside a civil rights lawyer, her eyes locked on Maxwell. No expression, no movement. She was there as a witness, but not the only one. Behind them sat Marisol, Bashir, and 2 others who had flown in anonymously. Their names weren't listed, but their presence spoke volumes. Congresswoman Thompson continued. We have evidence, Mr. Crane, that internal footage was deleted after a racial slur was allegedly used by your senior VP, Mr. Wallace. Are you aware of this deletion? Crane nodded calmly. I am. But no such footage ever existed in any official capacity. Any claims to the contrary are hearsay. And the whistleblower documents? I believe they've been doctored. A long silence. Thompson turned to the clerk. Bring in Mr. Cole. The room shifted. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras repositioned. Darius stood. Walked slowly. Every step sounded louder than it should. When he reached the front, Thompson addressed him directly. Mr. Cole, thank you for your courage. Darius nodded. She turned to the screen behind them. We have received a flash drive from Mr. Cole, containing what he alleges is original, time-stamped video and correspondence. This committee will now view the first file. Darius reached into his pocket and handed it over. The tech inserted it into the system. The monitors lit up. The opening frame flickered. The conference room at Crane HQ. Low light. Time-stamped in the lower corner. Wallace pacing. Then the line. Loud. Clear. Undeniable. We are not letting some speak for the company. I don't care how many languages he knows. Gasps in the room. Audible now. Even in the hallway. Maxwell Crane shifted in his seat, but only slightly. Then in the background, the reflection of glass. A second face. Blurry, but unmistakable. Maxwell Crane. He was in the room. A ripple of tension rolled through the space like static. Thompson leaned forward. Mr. Crane, care to revise your statement? Maxwell blinked. This is doctored. You're in the reflection. No, that's not me. Thompson looked to the clerk. Advanced to the internal memo. The screen flashed to a document. From M. Crane. To R. Wallace. Subject: handle the janitor issue quietly. We can't afford another PR scandal. Use legal if needed. The room exploded. Chairs scraped. Voices rose. The cameras zoomed in. Maxwell stood. I request a recess, he said loudly. This is character assassination. But the chairwoman raised her gavel. You are under oath, Mr. Crane. Sit down. Darius stood still. He didn't smile. Didn't flinch. But his jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. He'd waited months for this moment. He'd lost his job, his name, his safety. He had bled truth. And finally, the world was watching. Then the screen glitched. The feed pixelated. Froze. A spinning wheel. And black. The monitors all went dark. The clerk typed rapidly. Shook his head. It's not us. The server's been cut.
What?
Thompson snapped. Our cloud input, it just disconnected. Zora's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down, then at Darius. Her face changed. Oh no. He leaned closer. What is it? Zora showed him the message. FBI just received an emergency injunction from a federal judge, based on national security concerns. All footage must be seized immediately. Darius blinked. That's impossible. This isn't national security. Zora stared at the screen. They're calling it cyber terrorism. Before Darius can respond, two men in dark suits enter the room and walk straight toward him. One flashes a badge. Mr. Cole, we need you to come with us. Now. A $10 million settlement. No admission of guilt. A lifetime NDA. Darius signs the first page. Then he sees who's waiting at the end of the hall. The conference room where they brought him was nothing like the hearing chamber. No marble. No microphones. Just a muted gray table, leather chairs, and legal pads stacked like ammunition. The windows faced another building's brick wall. Deliberately. No view. No distractions. No escape. Two federal agents stood outside the door. No names. No small talk. Inside, Darius sat across from three men in suits. One represented Crane Global. One represented the U.S. District Court. And the third? His nameplate simply read, Special Counsel, Department of Justice. The air felt heavy, as if even the walls knew what was at stake. Mr. Cole, the DOJ counsel began, we appreciate your cooperation during today's hearing. We know the technical interruption was unexpected. Darius didn't respond. We've been authorized to present a proposal on behalf of all involved parties. The man continued. It's designed to bring a resolution that avoids further damage to reputations, livelihoods, and public trust. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, a pristine legal document. Bold letters across the top, settlement agreement and mutual non-disclosure. Underneath, $10,000.
No admission of guilt.
No further legal action. No public comment. Ever. Darius stared at it. Then up at the man. You're trying to buy my silence. No, the Crane Global attorney said. We're offering you peace. Freedom. You'll never have to work again. No more threats. No more fear. Unless I talk, Darius said coldly. The DOJ counsel folded his hands. This settlement ensures your safety. Without it, we can't guarantee stability. Zora was in the next room, behind glass, watching. She pressed a palm to the pane as he looked her way. He mouthed, "What would you do?" She didn't answer. Just lowered her eyes. Darius turned back to the table. You erased my name, my history. You tried to erase hundreds of others. And now you want to pay me to pretend none of it ever happened. No one's asking you to pretend, the Crane lawyer said. Just to move on. With dignity. Dignity, Darius repeated, bitterly. The same thing you said I didn't have when I used a mop instead of a mic. Silent. Then the DOJ counsel leaned forward. This offer expires in 15 minutes. After that, we proceed with countersuits. Leaking sealed information. You could lose everything, Mr. Cole. The choice is yours. Darius opened the pen. The room grew still. He stared at the first page. His name. The check amount. He thought of Marisol. Of Rachel. Of his mother. Of every floor he scrubbed while speaking a language no one wanted to hear. His hand hovered. He signed the first page. The second. Then stood. I need air, he said. They didn't stop him. The hallway outside was empty. Silent. Dimly lit. Darius walked slowly. Every step feeling heavier. He paused by the fire escape sign. The red glow painted his face. He gripped the settlement folder in one hand. Then heard it. Footsteps. Light. Careful. He turned. And froze. At the far end of the hall, just past the vending machine, someone stood, hands in pockets, waiting. It was Maxwell Crane. No security. No legal team. No camera. Just him. Like it had come full circle. The billionaire who once walked past him without looking, now stood at the end of the hallway, waiting for his silence. Darius starts walking toward him, and Maxwell smirks. You think you've won, but I brought something too. He holds up a small envelope, crisp and white, and adds, you're not the only one who knows how to leak things. From janitor to justice icon, Darius's story sparks a nationwide reckoning inside America's boardrooms. But as he walks the TED Talk stage, he ends with one haunting question. How many more are still being ignored? He didn't take the money. He He walked away from $10 million, a lifetime NDA, and the promise of silence. And the world noticed. The day Darius Cole said no, Crane Global's walls cracked. Not literally. Those floors still gleamed. But reputationally, the ground trembled. Internal leaks multiplied. Anonymous staff flooded whistleblower sites with memos, voice recordings, Slack messages. Investors pulled out. Class action suits stacked up. Wallace resigned. Rachel testified. Maxwell was suspended pending investigation. And the man who once swept floors in silence became the center of a national reckoning. Within weeks, business schools added the Cole case to ethics curriculums. Activists coined a new term, invisible labor apartheid. HR departments across Fortune 500s were ordered to audit their treatment of non-managerial workers, especially immigrants, janitors, food service, and night shift crews. A single story, his story, had become a movement. And not just because he exposed racism. Because he exposed it fluently, in 9 languages, across 3 continents without raising his voice. Because the world couldn't deny the truth when it was translated into their own tongue. The Justice Department subpoenaed Crane Global's top executives. But Darius wasn't there for revenge. He didn't show up in court for photo ops. He didn't monetize the moment. Instead, he disappeared. Until the TED Talk. It was announced without fanfare. A small headline on the TED homepage. The janitor who spoke 9 languages and said no to silence. The live stream link sat quietly until the countdown hit 0. Then the numbers surged. Thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. Then millions. Not because people expected a show, but because they needed to believe someone who had nothing could still speak truth and win. He stepped onto the red circle stage in a simple charcoal suit. No flashy graphics. No dramatic music. Just a man. A microphone. And a story. He looked around the crowd, filled with students, executives, former workers in Crane uniforms, and faces he'd never seen but somehow always known. Then he began. My name is Darius Cole. For years, I cleaned floors no one noticed. I heard conversations I wasn't meant to. I saw decisions made that I couldn't unsee. And when I spoke, not loudly, not angrily, just honestly, I was punished. He paused. I was called angry. And dangerous, then expendable, all because I remembered how to speak, and refused to forget who I was. He told the story, of the night he overheard Wallace, of the boardroom pitch he saved, of the fake credits, the threats, the deletions, the files in Warehouse 14. He told it plainly, with precision, not for applause, but for remembrance. And as he spoke, the screen behind him showed no logos, no videos, only the names of the janitors, dishwashers, and cafeteria staff who had shared their truths, one name at a time. Marisol, Bashir, Felicia, Manuel, Nguyen, people who once lived in silence, now glowing behind him in red letters. Then he said, some of you will walk out of here and return to companies where people like me clean the bathrooms you don't see. Some of you will leave this room and step past a security guard who hasn't had a break in 6 hours. Some of you will thank the diversity consultant who helped you write your anti-racism statement, while ignoring the black temp working in the basement whose name you still haven't asked. A hush blanketed the room. He took a breath. I was never asking for a seat at your table. I just wanted my humanity seen. Then he leaned in slightly, his voice steady but low. You watched me go from janitor to justice icon. But ask yourself, who else did you miss? Who else have you walked past without seeing? Who else have you stepped over because their accent didn't match yours? He turned slowly, letting the silence thicken. You saw me because I went viral. But most people like me don't. Another pause. Then, just before the final second, he looked straight into the camera. So I'll end with one question. One that should haunt every hallway, every meeting room, every boardroom in America. He stepped back. 1 beat. 2. Then how many more are still being ignored? The lights dimmed. The applause erupted. But in the back of the theater, a janitor, brown-skinned, maybe Filipino, quietly emptied the trash, with practiced hands, and paused just long enough to lock eyes with Darius. No words, just recognition. And for the first time in a long time, someone looked back. No one should have to prove their pain just to be treated like a person. If this story made you feel something, don't scroll past it. Type yes if you believe every life deserves to be seen. Subscribe if this broke your heart and you refuse to stay silent.